The day my parents died, my Uncle Marcus showed his true colors. I was 17, still numb from the car accident that had taken both my mother and father, when he called a family meeting at the sprawling estate that had been my home for as long as I could remember. "Oliver," he said, his voice carrying that false sympathy I'd come to know well. "We need to discuss your future." I sat in my father's study, surrounded by the antique furniture and leather-bound books that had always given me comfort. My uncle sat behind the massive oak desk, my father's desk, as if he already owned it. In a way, he did. As the new CEO of Harrison Industries, he'd inherited not just the company, but control over the family trust until I turned 25. "Your father," he continued, adjusting his gold cufflinks, while brilliant in business, was unfortunately lax in his estate planning. The company bylaws clearly state that only a qualified heir can inherit controlling interest. I knew where this was going. My uncle had always resented that my father, his younger brother, had inherited control of the family company. Now he had his chance to rewrite history. "Qualified?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I'm studying business and engineering at a state school," he cut in with a dismissive wave. "Hardly the pedigree Harrison Industries requires. Your cousin William is at Harvard Business School. He understands how to run a real company." William. My cousin who'd never worked a day in his life, who'd failed upward through private schools on our family name alone. The same cousin who'd spent his summers partying while I interned in every department of Harrison Industries, learning the business from the ground up. "This was my father's company," I said quietly. "He was grooming me to what?" Uncle Marcus laughed. "To run it into the ground with your ridiculous ideas about sustainable manufacturing, about employee profit sharing. The board would never accept it." He stood up, straightening his custom suit. "Here's what's going to happen. You'll be provided a modest allowance for college. Once you graduate, you'll need to find your own way. The estate will be sold, and the proceeds will go to the company's expansion fund." My chest tightened. "You're selling my home." "It's company property," he said coldly. "You have until the end of the week to pack your things and move to the dormitory. I've already arranged it with your school." I stared at him, this man who'd smiled at family dinners, who'd patted my head at Christmas parties, who'd pretended to care about me right up until the moment he could throw me away. "You can't do this," I protested. The trust is under my control until you're 25," he reminded me. "And given your lack of qualifications, the board has already voted to transfer all assets to the company's holdings. It's done, Oliver. Accept it." I stood up slowly, anger burning through my grief. "My father built this company from nothing. He trusted you. Your father was a sentimental fool who let his emotions cloud his judgment." Uncle Marcus's face hardened. "Just like you're doing now. Face reality, Oliver. You're nobody. You'll never be successful in this business. The sooner you accept that, the easier your life will be." That night, I packed what I could into my old Volvo. Clothes, books, my laptop, and most importantly, the external hard drive where I'd stored copies of all my father's research and development files. Uncle Marcus might control the company, but he didn't know about my father's secret projects, the innovations we discussed late into the night. As I drove away from the only home I'd ever known, my uncle's words echoed in my head. "You're nobody." I gripped the steering wheel tighter, making a silent vow. I would prove him wrong, no matter how long it took. The next few years were a blur of endless work and relentless determination. I maintained a full course load while working 2 jobs, one at a local engineering firm, the other doing freelance coding late into the night. Every spare moment was spent developing my father's unfinished ideas. My father had been working on revolutionary manufacturing automation software, something that could transform industrial production while actually creating jobs instead of eliminating them. The project was only half finished when he died, but I had all his notes, all his code, all his dreams. I lived on raiment and coffee, saved every penny, and graduated with dual degrees in business and engineering. While William partied through Harvard on my uncle's dime, I was building something real. The day after graduation, I took my savings, barely $50,000, and started Phoenix Dynamics. The name was a deliberate choice. Like the mythical bird, I would rise from the ashes of what my uncle had destroyed. The first 2 years were brutal. I worked out of my cramped studio apartment, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, using my car as a mobile office for client meetings. Most nights, I coded until my vision blurred, refining my father's automation software into something revolutionary. Then came the breakthrough. A small manufacturing company agreed to beta test my system. Within months, their productivity increased by 40% while their workforce grew by 25%. Word spread through the industry. Suddenly, Phoenix Dynamics wasn't just another startup. We were the future of manufacturing automation. Venture capital firms came calling. I chose my investors carefully, maintaining controlling interest while expanding rapidly. 5 years after starting Phoenix Dynamics, we were valued at $100 million. 3 years after that, we hit $500 million. I moved the company into a sleek office tower downtown, hired the best engineers I could find, and continued refining our technology. Every success was a step toward my ultimate goal, taking back what my uncle had stolen. I kept tabs on Harrison Industries through industry channels. Under my uncle's leadership, the company had grown aggressively, but at a cost. They cut corners on research and development, squeezed suppliers, and treated employees like disposable resources. The stock price looked good, but the foundation was crumbling. William, now a vice president thanks to shameless nepotism, appeared regularly in business magazines, bragging about his innovative leadership. None of the articles mentioned how he crashed 3 company cars or how his failed projects had cost millions. I bided my time, building my own empire in the shadows. Phoenix Dynamics expanded into new markets, acquired strategic competitors, and developed technology that made Harrison Industries systems look obsolete. Uncle Marcus never connected Phoenix Dynamics with a nephew he'd thrown away. The company was privately held, and I stayed out of the press, letting our technology speak for itself. As far as he knew, Oliver Harrison had disappeared into obscurity. Then the recession hit. Harrison Industries, overleveraged and underprepared, began to falter. Their stock price plummeted. Suppliers, tired of late payments and broken promises, started jumping ship. Banks called in loans that the company couldn't pay. One morning, my assistant placed a file on my desk. Harrison Industries was on the verge of bankruptcy. They needed a miracle, or they'd be forced to sell for pennies on the dollar. I picked up my phone and called our acquisition team. Remember that contingency plan we discussed? It's time. 3 days later, I sat in my office reviewing the preliminary takeover paperwork when my assistant buzzed me. Sir, Marcus Harrison is here for the meeting. He's asking to speak with Phoenix Dynamics CEO. I smiled, straightening my tie. After 12 years, it was time for my uncle to meet the nobody he'd once despised. Uncle Marcus strode into my office like he owned it, the same way he'd taken over my father's study 12 years ago. But time hadn't been kind to him. His hair had gone completely gray, deep lines etched around his mouth. His designer suit couldn't hide how the stress had aged him. He stopped dead when he saw me sitting behind the desk. The color drained from his face as recognition dawned. Oliver? Hello, Uncle Marcus, I said calmly. Please have a seat. We have a lot to discuss. He stood frozen, his carefully prepared pitch forgotten. You're Phoenix Dynamics. Surprised? I gestured to the chair across from my desk. I imagine you expected some Silicon Valley wonderkind, not the nobody you kicked out of his own home. He sank into the chair, his arrogance crumbling. How and did you build a billion-dollar company? I finished for him. It started the night you threw me out. Everything I've done since then has been leading to this moment. I opened a folder on my desk, displaying Harrison Industries' financial statements. Your company is 3 weeks away from bankruptcy. Your stock has lost 80% of its value. Your major creditors are calling in their loans. You need an immediate capital injection of at least $200 million just to keep the doors open. His face hardened. If you think this is some kind of revenge. Revenge? I laughed coldly. No, Uncle Marcus, this is business. Something you taught me all about when you stole my inheritance. I stood up, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Phoenix Dynamics is prepared to acquire Harrison Industries. We'll assume all debt, protect the remaining jobs, and implement our superior technology across all operations. You want to take my company? His voice shook with rage. Your company? I turned back to him. You mean my father's company, the one you stole from his 17-year-old son the day he died. I protected that company, he snapped. You were just a boy with ridiculous ideas about about sustainable manufacturing, employee profit sharing. The same innovations that made Phoenix Dynamics an industry leader? I cut him off. How's that old school management style working out for you now, Uncle? He slumped in his chair, the fight draining from him. The board won't approve this. The board approved it last night, I said quietly. They know Phoenix Dynamics is their only hope for survival. Sign the papers and we'll retain 60% of your current workforce. Refuse and we'll wait for the bankruptcy auction. Your choice. You've been planning this all along, he whispered. All these years. I learned from the best, I replied coldly. You taught me exactly how ruthless business can be. A knock at the door interrupted us. William burst in, his face red with anger. Father, you can't be serious about selling tow. He stopped short when he saw me. Oliver? What the hell are you doing here? Hello, cousin. Congratulations on that promotion to VP. How many company cars have you crashed this year? William's face flushed darker. You little. William, Uncle Marcus cut him off sharply. Sit down and shut up. I watched with satisfaction as my cousin, once so proud of his Harvard MBA, slumped into a chair like a scolded child. Here's what's going to happen, I said, pulling out the acquisition paperwork. Harrison Industries will become a wholly owned subsidiary of Phoenix Dynamics. We'll retain key engineering staff and implement our automation systems across all facilities. And what about us? William demanded. I smiled. You'll be offered the same opportunity I had 12 years ago, the chance to find your own way. Though I doubt Harvard prepared you for actual work. Uncle Marcus stared at the papers, his hands trembling slightly. You're destroying my family's legacy. No, I corrected him. I'm restoring my father's legacy, the legacy you tried to erase. I slid the contracts across the desk. Sign or I'll wait for the bankruptcy filing. Either way, Harrison Industries will be mine by the end of the month. For a long moment, the only sound was the ticking of the antique clock on my wall. The same clock that once sat in my father's study. Finally, Uncle Marcus picked up the pen. Your father, he said quietly, would be proud of you. Don't, I cut him off. You lost the right to talk about my father the day you betrayed his trust. One by one, he signed the papers that transferred control of Harrison Industries to Phoenix Dynamics. Each signature was like watching him age another year, the weight of his choices finally catching up to him. William stormed out before the signing was complete, no doubt heading to his lawyer's office. It wouldn't matter. The contracts were ironclad. What happens now? Uncle Marcus asked, setting down the pen. Now I'm going to turn Harrison Industries into what it always should have been. A company that values innovation over tradition, merit over bloodline, and people over profits. He stood slowly, straightening his shoulders with what dignity he had left. And us? What happens to the family? Family? I laughed softly. You stopped being family the moment you chose greed over your brother's dying wishes. We're just two businessmen concluding a transaction. After they left, I sat alone in my office, holding my father's old pocket watch. The only personal item I'd managed to save from the estate. The inscription inside read, "To my son, who will build something greater than I ever dreamed." I did it, Dad, I whispered. I took it back. The next morning, I walked into Harrison Industries headquarters as its new CEO. The security guard who'd once watched me pack my things nodded respectfully as I passed. The elevator carried me to the top floor, but this time I wasn't a grieving teenager. I was the most powerful person in the building. I stepped into my father's old office, now mine again. The family photos my uncle had removed were replaced with awards and accolades, not for Harrison Industries, but for Phoenix Dynamics. Signs of the empire I built from nothing. Within 6 months, Harrison Industries was transformed. Our automation software revolutionized their manufacturing processes. Employee satisfaction soared. The stock price tripled. Uncle Marcus occasionally sent messages through his lawyers, trying to negotiate a better position. I never responded. William, last I heard, was consulting for small businesses, though his Harvard MBA carried less weight now that the truth about his failures had become public. I kept my father's study exactly as it had been, down to the leather-bound books and antique furniture. But on the wall behind the desk, I hung a new photo, not of family portraits or corporate awards, but of a beat-up Volvo packed with everything I owned, parked outside my first apartment, a reminder of where this journey began. Success? I'd learned wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about proving yourself right. My uncle had tried to erase me from the family legacy. But instead, he'd forced me to build something far greater than he could have imagined. Today, Phoenix Dynamics leads the industry in sustainable manufacturing technology. Harrison Industries, now our most successful subsidiary, has become a model of corporate responsibility. The employees who once feared my uncle's ruthless policies now have profit sharing, career development, and a real stake in the company's success. And that 17-year-old boy my uncle called a nobody, he built an empire bigger than Harrison Industries ever was, not out of revenge, but because he believed in something better. Sometimes I sit in my father's old office late at night, remembering the day everything changed. The photo of the Volvo reminds me that success isn't about what you start with. It's about what you build when everyone else says you can't. Uncle Marcus taught me that business was ruthless. But my father taught me that it could also be visionary. In the end, I proved them both right. And that's a legacy worth building.